Welcome again to Gooseberry Bridge Farm. So this is our 17-day check-in. I planned on doing a 2-week check-in on our Starlink, but, life. So it's been 17 days since we got our Starlink, and we had a lot of people asking, after you've used it for a couple weeks, what do you think? Do you recommend it? So we wanted to just give a quick, status report. So we got the unit on in early March. When we got the unit, we set it up that day temporarily, and then the next couple days later we set it up here on the greenhouse. We've got a clear view of the north sky. We've never had a single obstruction reported from Starlink, which is great. In that amount of time, we've had every kind of weather that you can imagine, which is pretty normal for spring in Missouri. We've had days in the 70s, we've had days below freezing, we've had severe thunderstorms, tornado watches, but no actual tornadoes. We've had hail, we've had 50, 60 mile an hour winds. We've had some of the hardest rain I've actually ever seen in my life a few days ago. We've had snow, pretty hard snow, and so yeah, I mean, just your typical 2-week span in Missouri. So through all of that, the only issue that we've had with connectivity has been the rain. In really hard rain, we did lose connection to satellite, and we were without internet during that time. So from a weather perspective, we feel like we've had a pretty good sampling over 2 weeks. As they say, if you don't let the weather wait 5 minutes, you'll get something new, and that's been the case. And like I said, the only issue we've had has been in really hard rain, and I don't believe, my guess is that it's not the rain on the dish itself that's causing the issue. It's that much noise that the signal has to go through to get up to the satellites, because these storm clouds are going up 60,000 feet, and there's a lot of water between 50, 60,000 feet in the ground that it's having to shoot a signal to and from. And at any given point, it appears that we are connected to between 1 and 3 satellites. So I do have a high degree of confidence that as more satellites go into service and Starlink increases their constellation, that issue is going to get better. Yesterday or the day before, we had pretty hard snow, and did not have any performance degradation during that period. I actually kept the Starlink app open during the heaviest snow and was watching to see if my SNR dropped, and it stayed at 9 the entire time. That's the signal to noise ratio. It's measured on a scale of 0 to 9, and it never dropped below 9. Whereas during the severe thunderstorms, it dropped to a flat 0 for the entirety of the time that the rain was coming down really hard. And then as the rain lightened up, it went back up. From a temperature perspective, we haven't really had any issues, from a high or low standpoint, but it hasn't been terribly extreme, although we're in southern Missouri, and I know a lot of folks up in Canada have been running this all winter, so I wouldn't expect to have issues there. We had a little bit of light pea-sized hail during those storms. Didn't seem to have any issues. The face of the dish seems to be completely fine. From a speed perspective, we average about 50 megabits when I do tests. 50 down and about 20 up. It's not uncommon for us to get 100, 120. The highest reading I've gotten was 147 down, and the lowest I've gotten was obviously 0 during those really bad storms. But that's the only time we've ever actually had nothing. Even when the storm started to let up, even just a little bit, our speeds were at least 10 megabits and just went up from there. Our uploads have been pretty consistent in the 20 range, as high as 30, as low as 10 on an average. And our latency, the ping speeds have been generally between 40 and 50 milliseconds. 30s is not uncommon. We've had a few readings lower, and on speed tests I rarely have data loss. Now for my work, I do spend a lot of time on Zoom, And I've not had the issue that I had on my previous ISP, and that was where there would be about a 1 to 2 second, sometimes 3 to 4 second delay when in people talking, and that was because we had a lot of data loss on our wireless ISP. I have not had that happen at all since we've moved to Starlink. The only issues that I've had have been when we have 1 to 2 seconds of a no satellite signal time. Since Zoom and VoIP calls are so sensitive to signal loss, um, we'll sometimes get a pause, just a quick 2 second, 3 second pause. I've only had a Zoom call drop one time, and when I went and looked at the satellite map and compared that to the Starlink app, it was because we actually lost all satellite coverage for that time frame, which lasted at worst about 10 seconds. I'm really confident that more satellites are going to fix that issue, and people that are further north haven't had that problem, but being down at the 37-degree latitude where we are, the satellites just aren't as thick. If you haven't got Starlink and you're considering it, one thing that I would recommend just as a resource would be to check out the website satellitemap.space. A person put that together using NORAD data that shows the actual flight track of the satellites in relatively real time, and it's really helpful to know what your coverage will look like and does look like. And for me, it's pretty accurate. When it shows that I've got a satellite link to 3 different satellites and I run a speed test, my download speeds are in the 100 megabit range. When it shows that I only have one and it's really far off, it may only be 20 or 30 megabits. So it does match up, and it does illustrate how if you're further north, you're going to have a lot better coverage because there are more satellites at play. And if you go to that website, click on the little gear icon, and you can enter your longitude and latitude of your location, and it will actually show you what satellites you're most likely connected to at that time. The only real issue that we've had from a real problem is watching videos in Instagram and Facebook, specifically Instagram stories, just don't work well. Don't work at all, really. 2 workarounds that we found for that. One, Starlink has given the workaround to manually set your DNS from what they hand out, which is a public DNS server, over to 1.1.1.1. You can do that on your iPhone, your computer, or whatever device you're using. That has seemed to work, although we've only been doing that for a couple of days. So far, so good. The other thing that we've done is to use a VPN to any American server, which I know seems weird, but that seemed to work pretty flawlessly for a few days before that. Most VPN services do charge. However, just to test it out and for small usage or for low usage, like just looking at Instagram stories, we used the speed test app. The speed test app that we used actually has a free VPN feature for up to 2 gigabytes of throughput per month, and using that as a test seemed to fix the issue. So I'm pretty confident that there's some sort of connectivity or IP blocking issue that's going on there. I'm pretty sure that Starlink will fix that over time, so I'm not too worried about that. From a connectivity issue, that's really the only issue that we've had, other than just really sparse, no satellite coverage. So overall, if I had to recommend or not recommend Starlink at this point, based on my usage and my experience with other ISPs out in the country, I would give it a solid thumbs up. We've got low latency and generally fast internet that is much more reliable than anything else we can get out here. I have talked to some other people who have been considering it, who live close enough to town that they have cable modem or DSL or even fiber service in some cases. Your mileage may vary, but I would have to say that Starlink is designed for people who live where there aren't other options. And at least for the beta program, I would not rush to get it. However, once it hits full production, my advice would be to weigh your performance and price versus what Starlink provides at that point and make a call. But for us, it's a no-brainer. I've already paid up through this month on my wireless ISP, but I've got a reminder on my calendar to cancel it at the end of the month. So we're going to be all in here within about another week.